Earth. It is our cradle, our mother, the stage for all our triumphs and failures. She can be chaotic and serene. But above all, she is our home. But what if she wasn't our home? What if we were a visitor to this world? Experience Earth for the first time, the first glance of a sunset, the first view of life, and our accomplishments. In the vast, ever-expanding desert of the universe, one can only imagine the euphoria from stepping upon the shore of the oasis we call Earth. Witness our home through the lens of the very essence of our imagination and wonder. See our home as a visitor. The Pacific, Earth's largest ocean, was named for its peaceful demeanor. But what lies below is anything but peaceful. Go under the waves, then further down past the Earth's rocky crust, and you will discover a world of fire. Unseen by humans, this calamitous world reveals itself in rare moments when it reminds us of its existence through large, violent eruptions.
Volcanoes are important on planet Earth because they provide some of the most nutrient-rich soils that we use to grow our crops. Places like Indonesia, where their explosive volcanoes have some of the most fertile croplands anywhere on Earth. Volcanoes are also important because they provide our atmosphere with carbon dioxide, oxygen, and other what we call volatile compounds that we need to breathe in everyday life. My name is Joshua Schwartz. I'm a professor here at California State University, Northridge. I've been working for over 10 years in geology. I primarily study volcanoes. As a geologist, I study how volcanoes work, how magmas, or molten rock, is placed into the crust, the timescales over which that occurs, studying the elements that are in magmas, and then using those elements to tell stories about the history of the Earth.
With the first step a visitor takes upon Ambrym Island, they would immediately witness this story firsthand. A story that has been continuously written and rewritten since the Earth formed in this solar system over 4.5 billion years ago. The language of this story is told through a process we call volcanism.
Volcanism is the surface expression of energy being transferred deep within a planet to the surface. On planet Earth, we talk about volcanism in terms of molten rock. Rock that's melted deep within the Earth that then is extruded in form of lavas at the surface. On other planets, there's actually different kinds of volcanism. We can talk about cryovolcanism, where ice actually erupts on cold planets in the solar system. On Earth, Earth is characterized by plate tectonics, and so much of the volcanism that we experience or that we know of comes from subduction or plate tectonic processes where one plate subducts or goes down beneath another plate.
Nowhere on Earth is this process more observable than around the edge of the Pacific Plate. The Earth's largest tectonic plate, at over 103 million square kilometers of surface area, The Pacific Plate covers almost the entire Pacific Ocean and is home to 75% of all the volcanoes in the world. It is for this reason that the rim of the Pacific Plate has been nicknamed the Ring of Fire.
Around the Ring of Fire, subduction of one plate beneath another causes explosive volcanism because the downgoing plate brings with it ocean water. That ocean water is either trapped within rocks themselves, sometimes that water is bonded to minerals, but as the pressure increases, as that slab goes down, devolatilization occurs and it causes melting. That widespread melting leads to explosive volcanism at the surface.
Beneath the visitor's feet, a planetary engine is continually rumbling, recycling matter into the depths of the Earth below and blasting it into the atmosphere above. The power plant of this engine is the Earth's molten core. The core, a nickel-iron sphere about 1,200 kilometers in diameter, it is believed to radiate temperatures nearly as hot as the surface of the sun, over 5,000 degrees Celsius. This produces immense pressure, which is ultimately released between the cracks in the mantle, the same mantle that form the Earth's tectonic plates. As these plates are pushed and move across the surface of the Earth, they engage in a heated dance of destruction and rebirth as they collide into each other with varying outcomes. One such outcome is the San Andreas Fault in California. This is an example of a transformation boundary, where the plates simply graze each other as they move across the molten ocean below. Another outcome is when the plates pull apart from each other, forming divergent boundaries, such as the East African Great Rift Valley. However, at the edge of the Pacific and Australian plate, we see a more violent intersection known as a convergent boundary. The Ring of Fire is created from a convergent boundary as the Pacific Plate collides with other plates, such as the Australian plate, forming a subduction zone. This subduction zone creates intense heat from the friction and pressure as one plate interacts and moves underneath the other. On this planet, a visitor would experience a wide variety of volcanoes that are created from this phenomenon.
There are basically three types of volcanoes. There are stratovolcanoes like Mount Fuji, Mount St. Helens. These are volcanoes that are sometimes called composite cones. They're beautiful stratovolcanoes that form steep-walled sides. These are the primary products of explosive volcanism that we see along the Ring of Fire. At stratovolcanoes, we see pyroclastic debris flows, ash, lava flows. Oftentimes, the lavas are bimodal in composition, meaning that sometimes they're dark or mafic, and sometimes they're light-colored, like pumice or rhyolite. We see those bimodal compositions in stratovolcanoes. Another type of volcano that we often see, for example, at Amboy, are craters. Craters are typically small kinds of volcanoes. They're often composed of more mafic, again, dark-colored rocks like basalt. They can erupt explosively, but they're not nearly as explosive as stratovolcanoes. Another kind of volcano that exists are shield volcanoes. Shield volcanoes are broad topographic features that cover large portions of the Earth. For example, Hawaii or the Hawaiian island chains are examples of different shield volcanoes that cover immense areas, tens of kilometers. They're not sharp, pointy features, but they cover a broad area, and in fact, they look like a shield. Yellowstone's an example of a caldera. Calderas are negative landform features. In fact, some of the most explosive or super volcanoes on Earth are negative landform features or calderas. They are effectively shallow depressions within the Earth that are sometimes even filled with water. They look like large lakes, but underneath those lakes are hidden reservoirs of magma, sometimes enormous reservoirs of magma, that when they erupt, they can produce tremendous amounts of volcanic ash that can cover the atmosphere for days, decades, even tens of decades.
What causes these variations are simply the ingredients in the magmatic process. This elemental soup is as unique and varied as the ingredients in your spice rack. The type and behavior of the volcano will depend on this unique recipe. For instance, a visitor standing inside Ambrum volcano would see molten rock boiling in a large lava lake. Rare in nature, with only a half dozen of these lakes currently existing, these hellish pools are created in only a specific set of conditions. One crucial to these being the silica content of the magma. Magma with low silica flows more like honey. With its mild thickness, the low silica content and heightened iron and magnesium results in a runny soup that allows gases to easily escape to the surface. This lava composition often creates shield volcanoes, like Kilauea in Hawaii, and Ambrum volcano experienced by the visitor. If the magma has high silica content, it would behave more like peanut butter, crafting a highly viscous lava that clumps and sticks together. This sticky lava creates tall composite volcanoes like Mount Fuji. Although picturesque, these volcanoes will often build up pressure as the gases cannot easily travel through its dense magma, resulting in dramatic and violent eruptions. The ingredients of the magma isn't the only factor determining how a volcano behaves.
Volcanoes contain this underground molten magma chamber or reservoir where large amounts of volcanic material is stored in the form of molten rock. As that magma rises to the surface, it travels through what we call a volcanic neck to the center of the volcano at the surface. If that volcanic neck is blocked, it causes the pressure below to increase. If that neck is open, it causes magma to rise basically unobstructed to the surface, which would cause the caldera crater to fill with molten lava. On the other hand, if the crater neck is blocked, it would cause an overpressure which result in explosive volcanic activity.
Atop the caldera on Merom, the largest volcano on Ambrum, the visitor would already see volcanic ash painting a mosaic across the deadly landscape sprinkled in Pele's hair. Pele's hair, named after the Hawaiian goddess of volcanoes, is extremely light and can be carried several kilometers by the wind.
Pele's hair is a form of basaltic glass that forms from very tiny threads of molten lava that erupt into the air, cool very quickly, and form these hair-like matted structures. They're basically glass, but they look like hair.
In this hair-draped and chaotic environment, it is important to watch your step as the landscape is tattered with sinkholes and steam vents. The dangers in and around volcanoes are often unseen and can be revealed unexpectedly.
Volcanoes are incredibly deadly for a variety of reasons, one of which are the gases that we've mentioned before. Another feature that makes volcanoes extremely deadly are the eruptive products, like pyroclastic debris flows. They're mixtures of gas and tiny particles of ash that are incredibly hot. They travel down the sides of volcanoes at the speed of an airliner, blanketing everything in this hot, gas-rich ash. In fact, Mount Vesuvius erupted pyroclastic debris flows that destroyed Pompeii.
Mount Vesuvius, a composite volcano located in Italy just south of Naples, lies quiet today. But in 79 CE, it violently erupted, taking the ancient Romans by surprise and completely burying the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum under tons of ash. For the visitor here at Ambrum, pyroclastic ash flows may be unlikely. However, there is still plenty of danger to be endured. What goes through the visitor's mind as they look down into hell itself?
Imagine going from just watching a high-definition vision movie or a 3D movie and then seeing it in real life. You have to step back for a second and in awe because, wow, this is real. This is not TV anymore. This is real. Graphics can do nothing for what real life can show you. And you start looking back and you're like, it's a very humbling experience. And you realize this is the world I live in. And there's so much that it can offer. I'm Ida Vazin, licensed marriage and family therapist with GPS counselor. I study the psychology of relationships, as well as sociology and cultural anthropology. We have grown to have a love-hate relationship with fire. From one aspect, it is dangerous if you get too close to it. From another aspect, it was crucial for our survival and growth as humanity. So we've always had a dynamic relationship to fire. Think back to sitting around a campfire, feeling completely entranced by the dancing flames. It's almost as if fire is programmed within our DNA. Now imagine those feelings tenfold. Now imagine it with hot lava.
As a visitor enters a volcano, what they would experience is immense heat because they're going towards the very center of the volcano. At the center, you would see lava or molten rock up to 12,000, maybe even 16,000 degrees Celsius. Walls of the volcano would be very fragile. They would fall, they would be covered with loose volcanic debris. The gases emitted from the volcanic center consist of nitrogen, chlorine, fluorine gases, methane, sulfuric acid, variable amounts of CO2, all of which are extremely deadly to humans.
We are in the bottom of Marin. This is the first ever sleepover ever.
Yeah, so no one thought that we could come down here and camp down here, but we made it happen. And here we are in the
No one's done it before. No one's stupid enough or I guess insane.
Well, to give a little perspective on this trip so far, the climb down is like a 10 out of 10, just in danger alone because of the risk of rocks falling on
Hey,
you.
it's not the lava, it's the rocks.
But the fact of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned, there's no difference between camping on the ridge on top of the volcano versus camping inside the volcano, because if this thing decides to erupt, I'm sorry to say, it doesn't matter where we are.
Why would someone even risk their life to go down into a volcano? Well, think about it this way. We've evolved to have some very, very comfortable lives, very minimal risk and danger in our lives, and that's a good thing, that's a great thing. But we're still human beings, and we're still part of the animal kingdom, and we still have this thriving need to go out there and feel some endorphins pumping in us. Some people might do it with extreme workouts. Some people do it by watching movies and vicariously feeling the thrill from a horror movie. Then there's that next level of, let me go out there and live what I see out there. Live what's natural for me. So I'm gonna go throw myself in a volcano because it makes me feel alive.
As a visitor, it makes sense why you'd be drawn to experience this place firsthand. But why would a human being, knowing the risk to life and limb, journey to such an inhospitable place?
What is the cost-benefit analysis of going towards something so dangerous, so life-risking? You may wonder. There's always that initial evolutionary biological response where, danger alert, danger alert, danger alert, it's gonna hold you back. But then there's another reward part of us, the benefit part of us that's like, wow, this is thrilling. This is gonna take us to a whole different level of experience and reality. I really wanna do it. I really wanna do it. Where does that come from?
Our minds are programmed to reward us for taking risks, which have shaped the progression of our species. Early on in human development, life was dangerous.
Nowadays, there's not a lot of risk going on. We worked very hard to make it very safe and kind of more comfortable. So when that aspect of us still needs to be worked out, well, we're gonna go seek those thrill-seeking adventures.
I never thought I would go down into a volcano. It just kind of happened. Nick asked me and I said, yes, let's do it. And next thing I know, I am basically hanging from a rope with lava beneath me. And they say sometimes you don't have to look for adventure, but adventure finds you. And this is kind of one of those situations.
I was the pharmaceutical poster boy of my respective country. I was told by the doctors that for the rest of my life I would need the assistance of pharmaceuticals in order to function. So for me, it was all about how can I start to live an extraordinary life and just defy all the naysayers in my life and whatever too.
The whole point of living is experience. And when my father passed away, it kind of was like a wake-up call, slap to my face, and saying, Kevin, get out there and do what you can, because one day I'll be dead. And if I don't live in this moment, then what am I living for?
There's certain points around the world where the world gets to vent its frustration, and that is a volcano. And what a great way for humanity to intersect with Mother Nature. And that for me, it's daring. And as Eleanor Roosevelt said, do something each day that scares the shit out of you, and that is volcanoes.
For some, this hellish landscape isn't a destination to be visited, but rather, it is their home. Ambrum Island, the backdrop to Merom and Benbow volcanoes, are the residents to over 7,000 people. The tribes of Ambrim, whose cultures have continued to thrive over 3 millennia, have done this despite periods of high activity and explosive eruptions from the nearby volcanoes. They believe, as they have for many years, that spirits inhabit the volcanoes. In times of extreme activity, the natives will perform dances to appease the great angry spirits that reside in the mountain and its hellfire below.
Cultures all around the world have mystified volcanoes. It erupts on its own, it goes dormant on its own. We have no control over nature. So we always wanted to find a way to feel more in control and find more ways to be able to live with nature and nature's processes. That's why things like sacrificial ceremonies would happen, or they would do certain dances in order to have the volcanoes feel a little bit more tamed or pleased. It's a way to control an environment that we really don't have control over.
For the natives of Ambrim, who were born alongside these fiery giants, escaping its indiscriminate wrath is a rite of passage, as these people have no choice with the little resources available to them to relocate if and when Ambrim Volcano decides to reclaim their homes. However, for some, coexisting with these temperamental forces of nature is not a birthright, but rather it is a choice.
I've been living here since 2005, out in Kalapana, Hawaii, below Kilauea Volcano, the world's most active volcano. Mother Earth has been the only thing that's ever made any sense to me. The human race, I'm not quite sure about. Between the volcano and the ocean, if you don't feel the power of those two things, I think something's wrong with you, but I've been a carpenter most of my life. I sold my home, sold most all of my tools, and moved into a van and traveled looking for a different place to buy property. I decided I'd take the chance with the volcano. I was one of the few people who was able to go out onto the lava flow and experience a lot of the things that were happening, and it just hooked me right then and there. I became an addict. I'm a lava addict at this point in my life. There's no hope for me. When I first built the house, the lava was a bit further away. After a couple of years, it moved closer, and I started going out in the lava on pretty much a daily basis, and I got to witness all of these just incredible, miraculous things that were happening all the time. After I went back to the mainland and was traveling again, I was kind of thinking maybe I should look for a different place to live, but there's nowhere that compares to this. I mean, this is the ultimate as far as I'm concerned. I'm able to live self-sufficiently here. I have solar power. I catch the rainwater off the roof. I can grow most of my own food here. People leave me alone. It's a lot freer than it is in a lot of places in the U.S. And I have creation happening right in my front yard here. I knew full well when I bought the property here that the lava could flow here again. It flowed in 1990 on this property. In 2010, the lava flows came through my front yard and burned my house down. I knew about a month beforehand that things were going to get exciting down here. The lava flows had changed course way up over the crest of the hill here, and I kept a very close eye on what the lava was doing all the time. The night that it finally came and took the house, I was definitely prepared for it. It had been within a quarter of a mile for about a week. I could hear methane explosions happening from the lava going over vegetation. And I ended up going to the mainland, traveled for about 3.5 years, mostly in the mountains and anywhere I could possibly find in nature. After that amount of time, the land had cooled down a little bit, and I decided it was time to come back and rebuild. So I'm back self-sufficient again. And the volcano is flowing about 3.5 miles west of me and going into the ocean 3.5 miles west of me.
The danger and cost of living in such a hostile environment is for a few overshadowed by the benefits that the volcanic soil brings.
We have nothing but rock here at this point in time, so what we have to do is we have to bring in cinder, which is basically ground up lava rock. And we'll use the red cinder in the driveways and areas where you don't want plants to grow because it's very high in iron content. Where you do want things to grow, you use the black cinder, which breaks down and makes a very fertile soil. There's some trees down here towards the ocean that were burned by the lava when it came through in 2010. Those fell down onto the lava. The lava did not come back through there again and start that on fire or bury that. So I'll go and get some of that rotting wood, bring it back, mix it with the cinder that serves as like a mulch on the surface, and underneath it holds moisture, breaks down, feeds the soil.
The gift of creation arrives at the cost of something being lost. Nowhere can this be seen more clearly than at the foot of a volcano. Although the visitor, like those that live in the shadow of volcanoes, have no control over this environment, they realize the respect it demands is overwhelming. And yet, despite their awesome power, volcanoes are not eternal. For like all things in this universe, someday they will come to an end. As the plates continue shifting, one day these active volcanic environments will become extinct.
Here we are at Amboy Crater in the Mojave Desert. This is an example of an extinct volcano, which means that this volcano has not erupted for at least 10,000 years. This Mojave province, geologic province that we're in, was volcanically active in the Miocene from about 30 million years ago until recent. Here in Amboy, this volcano behind us was a scene where there was a pyroclastic eruptions, violent eruptions of primarily basalt. And that basalt would have filled this crater, and over time it would have erupted onto the landscape and then filled back up again, erupted onto the landscape, ultimately creating this dynamic environment that we see.
Volcanoes of all stages, being dormant or otherwise, leave telltale signs of the fiery force that sculpted the landscape around them.
Every rock has chemistry within it. In other words, it has elements that tell a tectonic and magmatic story about how it formed. We study the chemistry of those magmas in our laboratory using various kinds of mass spectrometers that can tell us the exact, precise chemical constituency of a rock. And we use that to tell a history of how the Earth formed. The chemistry is like the DNA signature of a rock. It tells where that rock came from, how long it took to travel from the mantle or deep within the Earth to the surface, because their chemistry tells us important things like the depth at which they form, whether or not they experience interaction with other rocks as they intruded into the surface, and the time scales over which it took the magmas to travel from deep within the Earth to the surface where they erupted.
Rocks surrounding the volcanoes give the visitor, as well as volcanologists, clues to the elements and conditions of the environment that created them. Rhyolite and andesite rocks have less iron and more silica and are normally found on composite volcanoes. They act more like peanut butter, clumping together, and in the case of rhyolite, are very light in weight as the gases could not easily escape as they cooled. However, a more common rock, one highly apparent at both Amboy and Ambrum, is basalt. Basalt is formed when the lava contains low silica and high levels of magnesium and iron, giving it a dark color. Basalt rocks are found in different variations. Ahoy is generally smooth, and Aha is very frothy. You can see vesicles on both where air was trapped and escaped as it began to cool. This crater volcano seems to be out of place, as there are no convergent boundaries and no subduction zones in the area to create the volcanoes like we see around the Ring of Fire. Amboy, like Kilauea, is a hotspot, creating volcanic protrusions that are ferried across the moving tectonic plates. Scientists to this day still do not know how or why hotspots are formed, just that they do.
Geologists don't all agree on how hotspots form, but what we do know is that hotspots are more or less fixed within the Earth, meaning that there's a hot region within the deep interior of the Earth, and as plates migrate over that hot interior of the Earth, it causes magmas and volcanoes to form at the surface. So effectively, plate tectonics is the surface manifestation of those plates migrating over an anomalously hot region that's burning its way through the Earth's crust, creating volcanic centers like the Hawaiian Island chain and the Yellowstone volcanic field.
The topography map of the Pacific Ocean shows the path of the Hawaiian Islands being formed by a hotspot in the middle of the Pacific Plate. This tropical paradise migrates with the plate over the hotspot, creating opportunities to form new islands. As a visitor stands today, Mauna Loa, the largest volcano on Hawaii, is also the largest active volcano in the world. Still, a new island is being formed underneath the Pacific and will one day become the newest addition to the chain of Hawaiian islands. The mysterious formation of the archipelago of Hawaii has created a unique environment not seen anywhere else in the world. An environment that has not only given us a tropical paradise, but also a window into the heavens above.
Mauna Kea is a special place for astronomy because it's high and dry. Mauna Kea provides a unique facility for astronomers on Earth. It allows deep observations of the night sky unaffected by clouds and the water vapor in the atmosphere. I'm Asanta Kureo. I'm a professor of astrophysics at University of California, Irvine. I do research in early universe, cosmology, trying to understand the formation of first stars, first galaxies, the distribution of galaxies in the universe, and also things like dark matter and dark energy. Mauna Kea is very unique. It's a special place. It's a volcano on Earth. When a visitor steps on the summit, the uniqueness becomes very clear. The land is very dry, it's flat. On the top of the summit, there's space to build observatories. The astronomers have made use of that. There's at least 11 observatories on Mauna Kea, operated by various universities and organizations, doing a variety of different sciences involving studying the universe and the solar system.
These telescopes, sitting atop this dormant volcano, not only allow us to view the stars above, opening our eyes to the universe that surrounds us, it also gives us a unique window to the infernos of our solar neighborhood.
Through these observations, we have come to realize there are at least another 5 places in our solar system where we can find volcanic activity happening right now. Volcanic activity on Io was the first place we discovered there are volcanoes outside of our Earth. This was actually an observation made by Voyager that visited Jupiter back in the 1980s. Through calculations related to gravitational interaction of how gravity interacts with the planet and the moon, some people actually figured out there should be volcanoes because the gravitational heating is so high, the material has to be recirculating inside and has to come out of the surface. In addition to active cryovolcanoes on moons of Jupiter, we see strong evidence for past volcanic activity on other solar system bodies like asteroids. Cirrus, which is the largest asteroid in our asteroid belt, hosts an ice mountain similar to the height of Mauna Kea on Hawaii. We believe this ice mountain is a result of the cryovolcanism in the past on Cirrus.
Through our observations of the heavens, we've not only discovered that volcanoes are not unique to planet Earth, but the scale of these natural wonders themselves can be larger in extraterrestrial environments.
On Mars, we see a number of volcanoes, and especially among them is Olympus Mons, which has a height about 72,000 feet from the surface. That's about 2.5 times the height of Everest. There's a big difference between the volcanic activity in the past on Mars compared to the volcanic activity on Earth right now. Earth undergoes plate tectonics where the surface moves around, the mantle moves relative to the magma underneath it. Whereas on Mars, there's no plate tectonic activity. So whenever the material comes out, the material keeps coming out of the same place.
Without plate tectonics, the mechanisms of volcanism can change dramatically. As a visitor stands on Earth, they are unaware of the processes taking place beneath their feet, yet the beauty they forge is undeniable. Like Olympus Mons on Mars, volcanoes on Earth dominate our domain. Life on this planet itself sits on a precipice, ever threatened by supervolcanoes that exist around the world.
Supervolcanic eruptions are potentially some of the most deadly and devastating in terms of us as humans on planet Earth. One of the reasons why is that supervolcanic eruptions spew an immense amount of volcanic ash into the atmosphere, and that can cause cooling not just on the days or weeks or even months, but on the decades timescale.
While a supervolcano hasn't erupted in recorded history, there is evidence it has happened in prehistory.
There are actually no historical records of a supervolcanic eruption, but what we know from the geologic record is that supervolcanic eruptions can cover immense areas of the Earth. For example, Yellowstone, if it were to erupt again, it would blanket nearly a quarter of the United States in volcanic ash. One of the last eruptions of Yellowstone extended all the way from Wyoming to the Mississippi Delta. It would cause widespread disruption of travel because you can't drive a car through a volcanic eruption. You can't even fly through a volcanic eruption. They destroy the turbines and engines of the vehicles, which basically make our civilization run.
Yellowstone is not the only active supervolcano that threatens life on this planet. One such supervolcano, found in the Italian peninsula, is Campi Flegrei. Its caldera lies beneath the Bay of Naples. It threatens over 500,000 people directly if and when it erupts. The lasting effects on global society are hard to predict, for if this volcano were to awaken, it could potentially trigger another mass extinction event. This catastrophe would not be the first time humans have faced such peril at the hands of a supervolcano.
One of the most violent and explosive volcanic eruptions in Earth history occurred in Indonesia, where the Toba supervolcano blanketed the atmosphere and likely resulted in cooling that lasted decades and almost caused humans to become extinct.
Around 75,000 years ago, the human race may have come close to its end when Toba, a supervolcano, erupted in Indonesia, covering the Earth in ash.
There's absolutely no doubt that the Toba eruption would have caused huge strife in the societies around him. If you're hunting and gathering, you're reliant on the rhythm of the seasons in ways that it's very hard for us to understand today. I'm Jeffrey Bowker, Department of Informatics at University of California at Irvine. My background is as an historian, so I've always been interested in the vast sweep of history. The hunter-gatherer is a season-by-season effort. They weren't stockpiling what they had. They had to just go out and get it as it was available. If you've got a couple of really bad winters, and we're talking with a massive eruption like this, we're not talking about 1 or 2 really bad winters, we're talking about something like 15, 20, 30 really, really bad winters. You need to change your patterns. You need to learn to adapt. We know the eruption occurred 70-odd thousand years ago. What we don't really know is where humans were and what humans were doing at that time. We do know that people traveled a lot more than we thought they traveled, which is one of the issues when you're trying to understand an eruption like Toba. Is just like we don't know where the folks were, we don't quite know what they were doing. The things that we have that leave traces, what leaves traces are skeletons, stone objects and things like this. What doesn't leave traces is all the ways in which we are weaving stories together, trying to understand their world together. So we have a very, very limited view of what it was like to actually be living in these prehistoric times.
While the specifics of daily life aren't known to science, we do know for the hunter-gatherer, surviving a worldwide catastrophe would have been an immense struggle. A visitor may have witnessed human strife that could have put our very survival in a delicate balance.
If you're living in the Indonesian area, that's an area that we know today, and we can see the effects of very large-scale eruptions over the last couple of hundred years. And we know that these caused massive effects in the world climate, in ways in which we could see the sun, the ways in which we could see the stars. The world suddenly appeared to be a different place. If you're living close by, then you can kind of tie it immediately to what was going on in that area. If you're living, for example, in England at that stage, or in Europe or anywhere, you've got no idea what's going on. All you know is that the sun is suddenly not there where it used to be, and it's not shining the way it used to shine, year after year after year. And we saw the effects of Krakatoa lasting 4 or 5 years. We're talking about an eruption which is many, many times that of Krakatoa, so it's many, many times the effect. And so we know that a lot happened.
The modern inhabitants of Indonesia are still threatened by volcanoes. In 2010, Mount Merapi volcano erupted, causing the death of over 350 people and a massive disruption to daily life in the region. This eruption was minuscule in scale to the immeasurable destructive nature of supervolcanoes like Toba, which are often harbingers of death and decay.
We can see this as a huge catastrophe, and potentially it was, but paradoxically, it's also a great chance to grow. That's where humans have always learnt growth, that's where they've always changed, is where suddenly what we expected from our environment is no longer happening. We need to rethink the world, we need to think in new sorts of ways. So I see this as actually an incredible growth spurt could possibly have come out of this eruption.
It is clear that even with modern technology, humanity may always live in the shadow of these magnificent giants. For if and when the fires of the deep make their grand reappearance, all of humanity itself will be threatened. However, even with all the dangers and unknowns, few places on this world produce such a unique spectacle as an active volcano, even more so at night, as the extreme heat and gases transform the environment into that of another planet, perhaps one familiar to our mysterious traveler. The turning cauldron of the lava below illuminates the crater, which is diffused by the rising gases as they reach for the heavens above. This world has yet to stop breathing, as the fire in its heart glows ever brighter. Having witnessed firsthand the awesome power of volcanism, what impression will the visitor have about our world? Will they only see violence and chaos? Or will they view these destructive landscapes through the lens of the creation it represents? As the visitor treks across the earth, how will their perspective about our home evolve and change? It is said that chaos often breeds life. This is no more clear in the life-bringing chaos of a volcano. For the visitor, however, chaos is a new concept to them, one not ample to stifle the journey of discovery. For this isn't the last stop for the visitor, it's only the beginning.